when you said that people now use for skin, I had this funny situation like 3 years ago. I had a call from one of the customers saying, "Look, not customers, like a shop which sells our olive oil. Uh, our customer asks for a strange question: which olive oil is best for massage?" Christ. I think like I have like six different olive oils, and I was thinking, okay, the less spiciest one, I'm guessing. So
Or the
yeah,
most spiciest, depending on the type of massage, right? So,
it's true.
welcome to this episode of Brains Byte Back. I'm your host, Eric Espinosa, resident foodie, and arguably part of the growing number of people out there that are starting to ask the right questions when it comes to what we eat. Where did this come from? How was it made? Is this actually good for me? Those are some of the same questions that are being asked about a staple in our kitchen that it's made its way into beauty routines and into some bedrooms: extra virgin olive oil. Look, I bet you didn't know that curiosity is fueling a boom in this cooking oil industry, with the market projected to more than double to 2.2 billion by 2031. But with so many options out there, how do you know what's actually worth drizzling over that salad? So in this episode, we sit down with Arsen Khachaturyants. He's an NYU math grad turned CEO of Arsenio, an organic wine and olive oil company based in Tuscany. But look, he does things a little bit different. He blends science with tradition while redefining what thoughtful agriculture looks like in olive oil production today in 2025. We explore how it's made, what impacts global warming has had on the industry in these last few years, what truly makes it organic, and how to pick the best bottle in the sea of options when you're in the supermarket. We also talk about an odd trend about putting olive oil in your Starbucks coffee if you haven't tried it already. Look, if you believe knowing what's on your plate starts long before it hits your kitchen, then stick around.
My name is Arsen Khachaturyants, and I am CEO of like a new agricultural company based in Florence, producing wine and olive oil.
Arsen, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Brains Byte Back. It's great to have you on because when it comes to innovation through tech, a lot of that is actually happening in the food industry as well. So I'm talking about like fresh minds with fresh perspectives that are focused on creating sustainable products specifically. And in your case, you're doing this in what some would argue would be kind of like an old school industry. Would you agree?
For sure, it's old school industries and also in a way, old school country, sort of, because Italy, like Greece, countries with a big history and a lot of knowledge. And however, in the agricultural perspective, it takes a bit longer for them to get this innovation, especially with wine, for example. Usually everything starts with France and then it goes to Italy, Spain, Greece. But with olive oil, of course, Italy, I think, is most innovative from the olive oil perspective.
I think it's a cultural thing too, because it speaks a lot to, the culture and the history of that specific country. But can we start? Maybe you can take us on a little bit of a short journey describing how you ended up as the CEO of Arsenal.
Yeah, sure. It's pretty complicated story because basically I was studying at NYU. I was doing pure mathematics and Japanese language. To be more specific, I was studying in theory of chaos, dynamical systems, and differential equations. It was my like main thing, and I was supposed to continue studying, doing my master's in Waseda University. I got their place there, but sadly, COVID started. I got the place in Waseda, and they told me, "Look, we can study online. You can do your master's online." And I said, "Look, I applied to Tokyo like a university for the sake of being there, practicing my Japanese, also doing mathematics there." So at that point, it was 2021. And I decided fully plunging into agriculture. But before that, because the company was established a bit earlier in 2019, end of 2019, it began with the fact that I was thinking, I want to do something valuable, something which I can give for generations. And at some point, because my family lives like in Italy, and we had like a good piece of land which was not used. And I told to my parents, like, I think I want to make a project. I want to start, producing wine. And at that point, they said, yeah, it's good. Like we will, support you. And I started it. And of course, I was 20 years old. Yeah, I just turned 20. And it's, I was thinking, okay, we need to start here. And I never like to plunge into any topic without really understanding it. So I decided, okay, NYU is finished. At some point, I want to go back to mathematics and continue my master's at some point, but not now. I started doing all the possible sommelier courses. I looked at the top sommelier courses. I finished WCT diploma like 2 years ago. I'm now doing master sommelier. Hopefully this year I will start with master of wine, and I'm finishing my master's in enology and viticulture in Bordeaux. So I said, okay, I will do that. At the same time, we start planting the vines, and we planted in 2020. And to produce the first wine, it takes 3 years. And after 3 years, you're only going to produce like 30% of potential production for the wine. And I was thinking, okay, why am I waiting? Because here you just need to wait, prune, start shaping your vine, start, thinking about the winery itself, the structure. Thinking, okay, we're surrounded by olives. Why not to produce olive oil? And that was actually it didn't start with olive oil, it started with wine. This is an important point. But what I wanted to do differently, because a lot of famous companies which like producing wine in Italy, they have olive oil. Most of them have in their portfolio olive oil. But I didn't want to make olive oil as part of my portfolio. I was talking with with my managers that I want to create two different financial plans, one for wine, one for olive oil, because I think olive oil deserves to have a totally separate financial plan without being part of portfolio and just sell for the name's sake. And there I was thinking, okay, firstly we have different varieties of olives, which is something which people don't know. Because people think, okay, olive oil is olive oil. It's come from olives. But there are hundreds of varieties, different flavor profile, different ripening season, and a lot of complex things. And the thing is, which I didn't mention, I'm a professional chef. I was working in a Michelin star restaurant. I was taught by many chefs from different countries, different nationalities, different cuisines. And this is why because people think, how mathematics and culinary and agriculture anyhow related. Apparently, it's somehow related in my case, because culinary, you're always close to wine, like olive oil, and this is why it was for me natural thing to do. And with mathematics, even before I got my place at NYU, I was writing my final project for my IB, and I was writing about the shape deformation. That is more typological project, but it started because I was designing 3D plates for my dishes. So
You're doing a lot of different things.
Yeah, they are. Somehow I try to interrelate them, but
they're all
honestly,
connected.
yeah, with mathematics, you start thinking differently because you start to divide these things into variables. Because I was thinking, okay, I don't want to produce just blend like many people do. You just harvest all the olives and you just press them, you have olive oil. Because as I mentioned, each olive has different perfect timing, and it's a shame when you harvest all of them, you lose a potential of each different variety. So first thing, we took all our at that point it was 400 trees, and we started to differentiate them. I got a person who knew, because olives, they look pretty similar, honestly. If you are not professional, they look pretty similar. So you need to look at the leaves, you need to look at the olives themselves. And we differentiated all these olives into 4 main groups, 4 different varieties. And then we started our harvest. So we harvest each variety separately, press them separately, and also created another blend just using already pressed monovarietals, which was actually a different story, because in Italy, usually you, as I said, harvest all of them, press, that's all, that's your blend. And this why it was a bit of more gastronomic approach. And I would say it's also a lot of education were needed. And I'm guessing that will be one of the questions about markets about, and I can expand later about it.
Of course. But so I know when it comes to Europe, you guys are very well known, obviously, for the olive oil production. I found a stat here saying typically Spain produces 40% of the world's olive oil, but production has dropped nearly 50% in recent years due to extreme drought. So when you were mentioning, I guess, because you got into this kind of recently, but this is when climate change and like and I'm seeing a lot of things come out of Spain when it comes to drought and when it comes to flooding. You're in Italy specifically. Like, how are you? Like, what type of challenges are you? I'm facing specifically when it comes to like climate change in your olive oil production.
Yeah, same. It's challenging because, for example, like recent example, 2024, uh, the potential of production of 2024 reached only 30%. So now, if you want to buy some like olive oil, if you like importer, like organic extra virgin olive oil from Italy, it's out. It's like out of stock, basically. Like, of course, small producers they have their olive oil, but you cannot buy bulk anymore, like for this year, because last year, due to drought, due to because climate change, and thank God people not stopped, but still for some use, like the global warming, it's very misleading because yeah, climate change is a much better term since it's not about just drought. It's about the conditions become more chaotic,
Mhm.
harder to predict, and you have if it's like not rain but floods, not like frost but like hail, and that's the main problem because in our case, last year was not a bad harvest, but again, a smaller percentage. And especially when you're going to organic, it's more difficult because we are doing only organic olive oil. And that was like also my choice because when I was doing at NYU, I finished NYU 1 year earlier because I got all my points earlier. And I decided to take one extra course for like climate change using like mathematics, like mostly like differential equations to make some projections. And you can see that we don't have much of chance, honestly, with what we're doing right now. And of course, in my case, it's a small step, and we try again educate. And of course, by ourselves, it's impossible to change anything, but at least we do something. And with organic, what people need to understand why, for example, it's more expensive because you lose yields more. You cannot save your potential yields much better like people who use conventional agriculture because we cannot spray with pesticides, herbicides, and that's a risk. But at least we know that we can produce the high quality, small yield but higher quality. But how we combat the thing is with olives, unlike vines, they are very heat resistant and drought resistant. So, for example, I don't remember in the last 5 years we watered any of olives. Like only when you transplant them from one place to another, or you plant the young olives. Like the first year, you might water them if it's too hot, not much of rain. But in general, they're very hardy or plants. However, the problem is you can say, oh, so they are very heat resistant, but why the production is dropping? Because the olives themselves, because olives is a fruit. You have stone and you have the pulp, and it's about a percentage between pulp and the stone. And of course, at the end, you will have olives. There's no problem, but it's about how much of this pulp will take this overall percentage, and that's the one of the reasons of the reduction of yields that there's a huge stone and it's a small amount of pulp, and when you press, you get much lower amount of olive oil. Yeah, that's I would say about Europe.
But it
Uh,
sounds like what you're doing as well is like so there's the climate change challenge, right? Like
yeah,
you're obviously having to combat this, but at the same time, what you're also trying to do is you're trying to insert, sustainability methods in something that would technically be old school. And these old school methods worked back then when they weren't dealing with these kind of challenges.
true.
But you knew this kind of going in, right? Like you knew that these are the things, but you're up for the challenge. This is something that you're looking to do. Can you talk to us a little bit more about like what are the techniques and the type of technology you're using in these techniques, these sustainability techniques?
Sure. The thing is with as I said, it's old school industry. Of course, we try to innovate, but with olives, honestly, when you are in the fields, there's not much of innovation. So like sustainable, it's only about, for example, one of the things which we are now doing. We prune every year. You have a lot of wood, and instead of, which is very traditional in Italy and very unsustainable, you burn this wood. So every like autumn and different parts of periods during the year, you can see some smoke, like in Tuscany, and you know that people are just burning the wood after pruning. It's not good, of course, and we understand that, and this is why we mulch the wood. We mulch the wood and then we use it for compost. That's the idea. This is one of the sustainable things because you just reusing it, you put it in the soil, and just that's all. And we try to, again, people who live around us, we try to also help them by saying, okay, you can give this wood to us. Like we can just mulch it and give it to you back the mulching if you want. Because honestly, it is much better if we don't burn the wood. That's one thing. From harvesting perspective, there's not much. Honestly, it's more about the human factor, understand when to spray to if there's like mold appears or there's some like the olive fly. And usually you spray with, copper. That's the only thing you can do. Or sometimes oils, like the lemon oils, like orange oils, so they're organic. But you can see maybe in the big production, like in Spain, where you have a flat surface, you have like perfectly aligned olives, and you have this machine going like and just shaking the olives. It's possible only firstly when it's a flat surface, because we have inclines, we have like 30 to 40% incline. It's impossible.
That's the beauty of Tuscany, though, is those views, right?
Yeah. You have these valleys, and it's impossible to do that. Then we have the old olive trees, like can be up to 100 and more years old, and they are high pruned. So you cannot do this with this machine. You need to have like much shorter pruning, and so we harvest with just vibrating fork. That's the only thing, because we don't really damage the woods, we don't damage the olives. We also usually use the nets which catch the olives, and that's all. The real innovation goes, I would say, with mills, like the pressing and mills, because there is a lot of sustainability going on. Firstly, about the water use, because you need to clean the olives before they're pressed, before they firstly cut, and then this paste goes into the pressing machine and start to taking the oils. Basically, firstly, the company which we use, because again, we are like it's still a startup, and we cannot buy the olive mill. It's too big of investment, especially with our small production, because we're like artisan. So we have a good producers of olive oil, like who actually give. It's one of the main business strategies, just to give for a rent their mills, and there we use the latest technology. So you have a choice to use like the old school, like mid, and like the newest. And usually the price range can differ by 10 to 15 euros per like 300 kilograms. So it's a big difference, and we're ready to pay much more for that, which gives you better olive oil quality, then more sustainable, because, for example, the stones, which usually, of course, they're not used, they are then cut down, and this is like another way of using these stones for fuel. They burn very well because they're full of oil, and then they sell the stones to some producers, and they use it for some kind of other purposes. So I would say that's where sustainability goes. And then, of course, when we talk about the bottles, for example, it's another way we can be more sustainable, telling people, like we try to give them a good quality bottle, which you can reuse. So it's, for example, this is our new bottle, which we haven't yet released. Just to give you an example, that's the bottle for olive oil.
That's a beautiful looking bottle.
Because I love whiskey. I'm also a whiskey sommelier. And
yeah, you know what? It does look, you're right. It does look like a whiskey bottle too.
And this bottle, it's thick, and a lot of people can say, look, it's no CO2 footprint. Yes, true. But at the same time, we say you can reuse this bottle because it's thick glass. Because sadly, unlike in wine industry, you cannot just say I'll make the glass thinner, because today a lot of wine producers, they try to reduce the weight of the glass. so we have those small footprints, the CO2 footprint. In olive oil, the protection from sun is super important. Like thicker the glass, darker the color, better for the olive oil. That's why we don't want to reduce the weight of the glass. However, we say after you use this bottle, you can use it for lemonades because it's a nice, sturdy bottle. You can use it for putting flowers, like for ikebana style things. So we try to promote that kind of idea. But
That's
in
very
general,
smart. That's very smart.
in general, sustainability, the olive production in general is sustainable. And you use like old school technologies, old school of pruning, although pruning can be one of the ways which is now advancing. For example, in old school, they like to make a heavy pruning when you cut like with big chunks. In our case, we try to cut more often, but small chunks of wood because that's less stress for olives, meaning that they need to put their resources to heal the wound, less possibility of infection, which is again, it's also a way of sustainable. That means you need to spray much, you reduce amount of spraying because organic is good, but it's not perfect. It's good for now, but we try to improve the ways of our organic agriculture by reducing amount of copper when we don't need it really, because copper it's a heavy metal and it goes into the soil. It's much harder to remove it from the soil. So that's
So you telling me
yeah.
if it's not organic, then I'm probably drinking copper, maybe, but likeliness.
If it's not what?
If it's not organic, then if like I pick an oil, then it could have copper in it.
No,
Chances are.
no. The copper spray is used for organic.
Ah,
Uh,
okay, okay.
yeah, and it's easily washed off. There's nothing bad for it. There's nothing bad. The only downside of copper is that it stays in the soil.
Ah, I
Like
see.
because, yeah, that's the only thing, and you need to think how to uh, improve your soil structure after this happens. But we're talking about a span of 20, 30 years, but we still try to reduce amount of copper because if you do inorganic, then Christ, you have so many chemicals, like really, like which like kills anything.
Well,
And the problem,
there's a generation now, obviously there's people are being very health conscious. So like organic is the thing that people are focusing on. I have trouble like when I go to the grocery store and I'm picking olive oil, I'm like I don't even know where to start. I think most of the time if it's quality, most people think whatever's most expensive. Obviously the design of the bottle. What would you recommend for somebody I guess that's there? Because it's a staple in every it's smart to get in this market. It's a staple in every home. They have it in your kitchen. And now people are using it for more things like, health skin routines and just overall general health. But how would you advise somebody when you walk into that supermarket and you see all of those options? Like, what would I keep an eye out for?
okay, I also there's a couple of things to say, but before that, I have like when you said that people now use for for skin, I had this funny situation like 3 years ago. I had a call from one of the customers saying, "Look, not customers, like a shop which sells our olive oil. Uh, our customer asks for a strange question: which olive oil is best for massage?" Like, Christ, I think like I have like 6 different olive oils, and I was thinking, okay, the less spiciest one, I think I'm guessing. So
Or the
yeah,
most spiciest, depending on the type of massage, right? So,
it's true. But about when you go to the supermarket, the first thing, honestly, it's important to look at the label because if it's clearly stated like Italian extra virgin olive oil, like organic, it's good because it's the must. It's compulsory. We must put on our label that like the front label, this information. Then the next step, look at the back and see the address, where this olive oil was pressed, where this company is based. Because if it's based somewhere not in Italy, but they're selling Italian olive oil, and they don't show you the information where the olives were harvested,
hmm.
then it can be super expensive, but it's not a good quality. Like it's surely they could mix some, other olives not from Italy. They could add some, dilute the olive oil with water or other oils. So that's, I think, important thing is firstly to understand that this olive oil is legitimate. The second thing, honestly, it's about the color of the bottle. I know a lot of people like the transparent bottles, but they're not good. Like it's just scientifically proven that the deterioration of olive oil due to the UV light contact is just terrific. It's just about a couple of hours and a lot of good things about olive oil is lost. And when you see these, transparent bottles standing like in the shop, and you don't know how long they were standing there, probably there's a problem with this olive oil. And they can be super expensive. I saw so expensive bottles of olive oil which are in transparent bottles, and usually it is French or Greeks who are usually put in transparent. Italians do, but very rarely. They usually use dark. There's a big tradition of dark colored bottles. So firstly, I would look for a dark colored bottle, not transparent. Then you also can use tins. Tin olive oil in tin cans is also right. Of course, the best is glass. Then it's tin. And then in the worst case scenario is plastic, because plastic sadly gives you, firstly, it's not super sustainable. Even if it's like sustainable plastic, it gives you a taste. After some time, it gives you a taste in your olive oil. So I would look for glass bottle, dark colored glass bottle, or tin can, where you understand the origin. It's clearly stated. And usually also when you write monovarietal, for example, if there written the name of the olive, it's harder to, I think, make it fake it, because monovarietal is such a niche. For example, in Italy, in Tuscany, the main varieties, it's like Maraiolo, Frantoio, Lecino, Lecce del Corno. It's the most like famous varieties from which you make your olive oil. So I think that would be the point, to surely understand the origin, because there's a lot of people who try to get into extra virgin olive oil because they know it's expensive product, and they can do so many things to like reduce the costs by mixing, taking the olives from Turkey, from or like different countries where it's much cheaper. So that's important. I would say that's important. And
I think it's
also
kind of
not,
like investing in a bed. Like, this is something that you're going to ingest almost daily.
yeah,
You
for
want to make sure
sure.
that it's quality.
Yeah, because it's important for your health, because you're using it, for frying, for salads, and I think it's better to invest into food which you consume, because in the long term it will be good for you. And this is why I think agriculture in general it's an interesting area, because you understand you're not just producing something, but it's something which is consumed, and you directly have a contact with your consumer, your customer, because it's your responsibility to be sure that your product which you sell is actually good, and it will be not anyhow harmful. So that's also a bit more responsibility from from this side. Yeah.
So on that note, I'm actually kind of interested because, doing some research, yeah, there's a lot of different ways that you could use olive oil. What's one trend that you live by on a regular basis, and another trend that you think is a little ridiculous when it comes to olive oil?
Mhm. Like one trend which I think it's sort of good is like about the olive oil consumption, like in the morning. I think it's a good thing, just to consume some olive oil. If you don't use it in salads, just have like a tablespoon of olive oil. It's pretty good in general for your health because of polyphenols, antioxidants. It's good, and it's nothing harmful for that. Of course, you need to look about if you have any particular allergies or something. Like, there was super popular thing about the addition of vinegar into your water and drink it, but not all
I
people.
remember that one.
Yeah, well, it's like about the glucose spikes. But the problem is when people start doing it, vinegar is pretty acidic, and if you drink it on the empty stomach, some people can bear it, some cannot. So I think this is interesting trend with olive oil. Other one which was interesting but didn't last long was oleato in Starbucks. I think because a good olive oil has a very particular taste, like it's like greenish, herbaceous. Not everyone maybe wants in their coffee the herbaceous flavor.
For those
Uh,
listening, basically it was a trend that happened I think it was at the start of last year in January, where Starbucks decided to put olive oil, it was oil infused coffee drinks using
yes.
extra virgin olive oil. We inspired Starbucks' founder to visit Sicily and the Mediterranean. But yeah,
Yeah.
because they were picking up on that trend that people wanted a spoonful, but not
Yeah.
necessarily a spoonful in their coffee.
Yeah, because then there's a question of when you make coffee, you work with hot, high temperatures, and is there will be deuteration of good things from olive oil. Then I have a big question about what quality of olive oil Starbucks used.
True.
It's like, with matcha latte, you surely know that's not matcha. It's like probably grinded sencha, like cheap tea, which. So that's a question. Again, I honestly enjoyed oleato, when I was making for myself in my home, but I tried one oleato in Japan in Starbucks. I had a question about it.
I don't even think it exists anymore. I think they took it off, the list because it wasn't either. And I think it's risky because I can imagine it could do some damage to some people that are already reacting to coffee, and then you add a little extra something. So
yeah, with also questionable, surely not organic olive oil. I think I doubt they use organic olive oil.
Arsen, I really appreciate you taking the time to join us on the podcast. If somebody's interested, I imagine maybe if somebody goes to Tuscany and they're interested in maybe visiting your farm, your land, how could they get in touch with you? What's the best way?
Right now it's like the website or Instagram, because we are really investing into our Instagram to have a good quality. Although with website, we're going to relaunch it. We make a very cool website right now. So that's right now the ways. Yeah.
And perfect. I'll include that website in the link. Thanks again, Arsen, for joining us.
Thank you very much.
That's a wrap for today's episode. If you've benefited from what you've learned today, feel free to leave us a review on iTunes. You can also find all our past and future episodes on YouTube and Spotify under Brains Byte Back. And if you'd like to connect with us directly, you can always reach out to us by email at info@sociable.co. Remember, your feedback helps us grow. We welcome it. We appreciate you joining us. Until next time.